Good evening and welcome to the 35th Political Pundit Night, exclusively on mytwintears.com. I'm your PhD of politics, Dr. Stephen Coleman. Tonight, we'll be discussing Trump versus Biden, the 2024 presidential election, who wins, why, and what it all means. Right now, though, I'd like to introduce tonight's pundits, panelists, and community leaders. Georgia Verdier, Elmira Corning NAACP President, Joseph Kolosinski, Associate Professor, Elmira College, the Reverend Nathaniel Wright, pastor of the Calvary Baptist Church in Ithaca, just celebrated his 20th anniversary with the church. So congratulations to Reverend Nathaniel Wright. Susan Betz-Toma, attorney and pastor, is with us. Deborah Lynch, coming to us live and direct on Zoom from Dublin, Ireland. Deborah is member of the New York State Democratic Committee and is a political activist. Dan Mandel is with us. He's the Elmira mayor. Dr. Jim Hassel, educator and former Elmira mayoral candidate. Tom Santulli, the former Chemung County executive. Dr. Richard Dozier, author, pastor, and educator. Brent Sturmer is here. He's a Chemung County legislator. Always a pleasure to have Brent Sturmer anytime I have a program and he can participate. Great stuff. Jeff Murray, veteran journalist, Star Gazette, the USA Network. Jeff Murray is the Dean of Journalism in the Twin Tiers. It's really an honor to have him on these programs, and I really want to thank Jeff. Also, I want to thank tonight's, again, not only Jeff, but all the panelists, and also WEZM TV for providing the platform for tonight's discussion. Always want to thank the viewers. You folks tuning in. Thank you so much, and so on. So many riveting issues are in play in this presidential race: the border, the cost of living, inflation, crime and violence, abortion and reproductive rights, the war in Gaza, campus protests, the environment, and the state of our democracy, and many, many more, including Donald Trump's legal troubles, which have been front and center this week with the trial of Stormy Daniels in the hush money trial in New York City. Now, all of these issues, and you put them all together, it could explode this summer in Chicago at the convention, which will run from August 19th until August the 22nd. That, of course, is the Republican National Convention. Actually, the Republican National Convention, my apologies, is in Manhattan from July 15th to July 18th. And then the Democratic Convention is later. If I'm misspeaking and someone wants to correct me, please go right ahead. So with less than 6 months to go, who is likely to win the presidential election in November? President Biden or former President Trump? Why? And what will this mean for America and the world? To start, I've asked Elmira College professor Dr. Joseph Kolosinski to break it all down with analysis and commentary, and then we'll be rolling and talking with the other panelists. Joseph Kolosinski, doctor.
Thank you, Steve. And hello to everybody. It's nice to be back. I thought I'd start off by giving a rundown on the state of the race. I spent some time on electoralvote.com and some other sites. I think electoralvote.com's information looks pretty good. Right now, they have the race sitting at Biden 209 and Trump 216. It's not what I want to see, but that seems to fit with the data, although I think a better characterization might be to remove the states that are barely Democratic and the states that are barely GOP in the states that are exactly tied. That puts the race at Biden 195, Trump 202. There's an unusually large number of states that are right now all within the margin of error. Um, and I'm not sure to the degree to which we've baked everything in we need to. We've seen abortion right activists turn out in large numbers and skew races in their direction when we weren't expecting it. We saw two presidential elections where Donald Trump was able to really bring out some low propensity voters that don't vote all the time, and that skewed things in his direction. But I plugged the data into my computer program. I ran 20,000 roughly 20,000 iterations, and it comes down to a probability of, at this moment anyway, probability of Donald Trump winning at about 66%, probability of Joe Biden winning at about 33%, and the probability of ties popping in at about 1%. That's again, not what I'd like to see, but it's like 8% better than what it looked like Trump's chances were, according to 538, the night that he won the presidency. The only thing I feel certain about here is that we're not going to be where we are soon. And there's opportunities and there's challenges on both sides. Obviously, the economy is a challenge for Biden, but it's also an opportunity because the fundamentals of the economy seem much better than it seems to be baked in. We've dealt with inflation, but we've also had the smallest amount of inflation of any industrialized country in the world. Unemployment is currently at a record low. Wages are finally growing faster than prices. Immigration is a challenge for Biden. But it's also an opportunity because the congressional Republicans killed a bipartisan bill that might have done something about it. And I don't think that's the sort of thing that the American people have a lot of patience for. Gaza is a challenge for Biden, but it's also an opportunity if he can bring those young folks back into his camp. Of course, the challenges for Trump are equal. You can see in the primary voting a few nights ago, we had the Indiana primary, and Nikki Haley, who has not been in the race for months, was polling at 20%. That's some discontent. Within the Republican voters, right? Clinton didn't see stuff like that in 96. Bush didn't see stuff like that in 2004. Obama didn't see stuff like that in 2020, and Bush himself didn't see stuff like that. And 2012, Bush didn't see stuff like that in 2016. Who are those voters? Can he get them back? That's a good question. And of course, all of Trump's legal troubles are a challenge for him. Can he get clear of them? If he gets convicted, polls say that there's a ton of people who will not support him. And a lot of people who consider not supporting him. And so it's an interesting race, but it is very volatile at this time. Putting on my pundit hat, I got to say, looking at the state of this thing, it amazes me that Trump is doing so well. Probably part of that is my perspective. But the thing that really amazed me is that a few weeks ago, the whole "are you better off than you were 4 years ago" seemed to be getting traction, and it seemed to be getting traction in favor of Donald Trump. Because I remember 4 years ago, 4 years ago, the country was all but shut down. 4 years ago, Joanne and I couldn't go into the vet's office with our cat who was dying. 4 years ago, millions of people were pushed out of work. The supplies trains were broken and it was hard to get toilet paper. There was a spike in calls to poison control because somebody suggested that maybe folks should inject cleaning solutions. I remember 2020, and it was dystopian. Actually, 4 years ago, right at this time, a bunch of my friends were about to get laid off from Elmira College. So I still think that this race is Biden's to lose. And I think it's up to him. He really has to convince people, right? He needs to make the election about being egalitarian and not being competent and not being democratic and not being law-abiding and not. And if that sounds familiar, as I was writing that, I realized I was riffing on an old episode of West Wing, but it works. And so I'm sticking with it. And there we go. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Joseph, for your insightful commentary and analysis. Wanted to just clarify the Republican National Convention will take place in Milwaukee from July 15th to July 18th. The Democratic National Convention will be held in Chicago from August 19th to August 22nd. These conventions have the potential of really being very exciting in certain ways, but also there's a concern that maybe with all these issues I alluded to earlier, we might have a 1968 Democratic convention on our hands. In fact, the Democratic convention is in Chicago, ironically, from, again, August 19th to August 22nd, again, with all the issues. And also on the Republican side, all the issues, we could see some really rollicking conventions and have to see exactly what happens. It could be something to watch and something to look carefully at. Wanted to also mention that Biden seems to be gaining some traction, more traction. USA Today, this is a headline that appeared just the other day. It's a tie, Biden 37%, Trump 37%, as Hispanic, Black, and younger voters shift over to Biden. So that is something that is heading in Biden's favor. One other thing also that has recently been on the news, that this seven swing states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, those swing states, according to a recent Emerson College poll taken by Emerson College and The Hill for Nexstar Television, indicates that Trump is ahead of Biden in these 7 swing states. That's important information because at the end of the day, it's not the popular vote that counts, it's the electoral vote. And these swing states are very important. So we'll have to watch that very carefully and how things are playing out. One at this point, Georgia Verdier is the president of the local NAACP. And Georgia, there's before I ask your opinion on who's likely to win the presidential election in November, why and what would mean for America. Before we go there, you have an event coming up that's very important. So could you please share this event with us?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Coleman, and good evening, everybody. Our event is our 55th Annual Freedom Fund Awards celebration. It's going to be at the Radisson Hotel in Corning on June 7th. And the theme is Champions of Change, honoring those who make a difference. And that's what we're talking about tonight. We're going to try to find people who make a difference. So we would like for all of you to show up at the announcement. The press has been notified, and announcements and Reverend Wright and all flyers will be coming to all the churches. So hopefully you will support us. It's a time when we invest in our young people, because we old heads kind of out of it somehow. And maybe we got to get our young people ready to take on this political storm that we're in. So we are recognizing them, giving scholarships, and trying to get them equipped to meet the challenges of the future. Because with the news being overwhelming, we're going to have a breakthrough. But anyway, that is coming up on the 7th. And tomorrow, the Corning Community College is having their cultural day. And we will be there to talk with students and meet with students and share information.
Okay, Georgia, if someone watching wants to go to the Freedom Awards that you just mentioned, do they call to get a ticket or just show up, or how's that work?
They call, but we're trying to make sure we get a link so you can buy it online. But we try to save people money, because if you get it online, you're going to pay about $6, $7, $8 more. So anyway, but all the flyers, all the data going out have information where you can make contact to get tickets or information or whatever you might need. But I'll talk with you further about that offline too. Okay.
Okay, and if the Corning Community College event you just mentioned, is that free, open to the public? And
yeah, there will be vendors from all across the area there. Tables are sharing information and talking about their organizations and giving out information in terms of what we are trying to do to make this community a better place.
okay, well that's a great something I think we all share, Georgia. Now, president of the local NAACP, who do you think is likely to win the 2024 presidential election? Why, and how big a deal is this? Georgia.
I don't have a who. I have a who I wish would, but I won't even do that right now. I would like to talk about where we are as a country. I think we are at, and you mentioned something about the crossroads. I think as a country, we're at the crossroads of saving our democracy. I think democracy is hanging in the balance with dictatorship dancing on center stage. And I believe as Americans, we have to come together to determine what is good for America. It's not about me and not about you. It's not about the donkey. It's not about the elephant. It's about what is good for America. And I'm hoping sensible people will take a look at that and stop dancing to crazy tunes that may be good for them or good for a party, but not good for America. And so my prayer is that we're going to have some divine intervention, but I won't go there on this program. But I just see that I was looking at Robert Frost's poem about, I think it was, where do we go from here? And did I get that right? But anyway, no, the road not taken. And he was talking about we come to a place where we have to make choices and decisions that will impact our lives, our children's lives, our country's life, and as it is, as we know it, and everything we are about. And we have to get to a place where we stop playing politics and look at real life and decide what is good for us and America and our future generations to come. And I don't know if we are doing that, but I believe I hear a lot of poll talk about this person leading, that person leading, and I don't buy into that, because you've heard me say many times when we went to bed, when Mrs. Clinton was running, everybody was convinced she was going to be president the next morning based on the polls, and we know where she is. So anyway, I don't get hyped on the polls because they don't vote. I just listen, talk to people, John Q. Public, who never gets polled, and those people are tired. They are simply tired of the craziness we are entertaining in America. They're saying we are one of the richest countries and supposed to be most advanced countries in the world. And yet, and Deborah was talking about, I don't want to ask her what other people are saying about us, but when I've traveled abroad, they don't think a lot of us anymore. They think we're kind of crazy now. They used to look up to us, and they, yes, some people are still trying to come here, but many of them who got here saying, I didn't realize you guys had all these problems. I thought I would be born again if I got to America, and that everything would be cohesive and I could make it and all. I think we are better than this, and we have to get better. Both candidates are facing a whole bucket full of problems like abortion, healthcare, immigration, judges in the Supreme Court, inflation, foreign policy, all of those things. I don't think anybody has all the answers, but I think one of those candidates is a little bit more stable than the other, who might be able to address them a little bit better, because you have to get out of self to address problems and look at the country. And I believe that one is a little bit better poised to do that. Then we start talking about age, but we know we're talking about two old men. So you can't use that as an excuse. You have to look at which old man is better seasoned to lead the country. So I'm hoping for that, and I won't give any names, but I'm looking at things that are happening, and I see some progress being made in spite of democracy hanging in the balance, and whatever I said was hanging on in a dictatorship on the horizon. I believe American people are smart. I believe when it's time to vote and they go behind that curtain or wherever they go to, they're going to start thinking about, what am I doing? And what would this do? How would this impact the country and all? And I believe we're going to make some better decisions than you're hearing on the news. And that's about enough for me for now.
Okay, Georgia, thank you very much for those comments. Again, the question, who's likely to win the 2024 presidential election? Who wins, why, and what it all means? I think you were saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were saying that you felt that Donald Trump was not as stable as Joe Biden. And I think you were saying that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy more so than Joe Biden. Is my interpretation correct?
Well, I'm going to let you figure that out, but you're pretty much in the ballpark.
Okay, well, thank you for saying I'm in the ballpark. A lot of people are, indicating that they feel that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and he has indicated that he wants to be a strong president. He said one of the only mistakes he made when he was elected president was that he was just too nice. And if he's back in the presidency, he's not going to be so nice. And he wants to fire a lot of career bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., and make a lot of changes. He wants to deport a lot of the folks from other countries. He wants to deport them. He wants to use the military to do that. There's a whole list of things that Donald Trump would like to do. And that would really cause a sea change in terms of America and how America operates. So, Georgia, we'll be back to you at some point. By the way, I want to mention everybody, don't be shy. Again, the question is, who is likely to win and what the whole thing means for the country and how important is it? So please don't be shy about expressing your viewpoints. Everybody here's been on the program before, and you articulate your viewpoints in a measured way, an articulate way. There's no rush. So please feel free to speak your mind and so forth. So I want to thank Georgia Verdier for her comments, and Joseph Kolosinski, Professor Kolosinski, thank you. Reverend Nathaniel Wright, pastor of the Calvary Baptist Church in Ithaca. He used to be pastor of the Friendship Baptist Church in Corning. He is with us. Reverend Wright, Trump versus Biden, the 2024 presidential election. Who is likely to win, why, and what it all means? Pastor Reverend Wright.
Well, thank you, Dr. Coleman, again for inviting me. I would say that my hope is I think that President Biden should win, just given the both the threats to democracy and the rule of law that former President Trump brings to bear. I think that with not just when we say legal trouble or minimize the case in New York that is currently happening to hush money as opposed to the true election interference that it is, or the documents case that has been suspended indefinitely. Those are real threats to national security. Those are real threats to just the overall rule of law. His continued, dismissal of being found in contempt of court. All of those things that should just allow for President Biden to easily win re-election. Certainly polls, poll of polls have things way closer. I saw one poll in Politico a few weeks ago that recognized that both men were older. And when voters saw that both men were old, that they preferred President Biden to President Trump, in kind of a our old man can beat your old man kind of thing. But I think what it means for the country, certainly as Georgia alluded to, kind of this democracy versus dictatorship. And one of the very few platforms, and former President Trump doesn't necessarily offer many policy things, but the policies that he does offer, to be quite frank, just downright for me seem just contrary to American values. Project 2025, which is a major proposal that is being worked on in terms of what would be the transition team and the working agenda for a second Trump administration, that heavily identifies, deregulating industries, privatizing government functions, militarizing police, helping American corporations with more tax breaks, adding to the deficit, all of those things, which seem to, which would place America back again. And then as the Supreme Court continues to lean more more right, and in my estimation, not necessarily in the center of where the nation actually is, and even ideas of leaving things to the states and states' rights, which in our nation's history has a very volatile connotation to it. So I think that where we find ourselves, and every presidential election, I'm certain, certainly in my voting lifetime, it's always the most important election of our lifetime, right? But I do think that this one certainly seems to hold a little bit more weight than normal. And so, yeah, I think that's about where I stand.
Okay, thanks, Reverend Wright. Just relating to what you just said, I've described Trump versus Biden as the election of our lifetime. Is this a fair description? You mentioned that everybody says this is the election of a lifetime, it seems, when an election comes around. But is this a fair description in this case, or am I guilty of unadulterated hyperbole?
No, I really do think it is. Again, we've heard it so many times, but I do think that whether or not we have someone who is going to be a dictator, where it stands in terms of climate change, what we'll do moving forward, all of it, voting rights, women's rights. All of it hangs in the balance, and this one seems to be more weighty. Even in past elections, even though I may have voted for one particular candidate over another, didn't necessarily get the sense that democracy could be over, free and fair press could be over, all of those things could be jeopardized.
Okay, and you mentioned the criminal problems that Donald Trump has. Right now, the hush money case involving Stormy Daniels is taking place in a New York City courtroom. So that's the hush money case. Now, there's 3 other important cases which may be postponed until after the election. The alleged Georgia election interference case, where Trump is charged with trying to overturn Georgia's election results for the 2020 presidential election. It looks like that's been delayed. Then another one is the classified documents case, where Trump is charged with illegally keeping government documents from his time in office, important classified documents, that has been delayed indefinitely. And the case where Trump is charged with trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, that's been delayed until we hear from the Supreme Court on whether Trump has immunity as president from doing that kind of stuff. So what do you think, Reverend Wright? You know, we have this hush money case, which has turned, I think, into a circus. I think it's turned in a circus of the macabre, very strange Twilight Zone stuff. We have these other three cases that don't like they're going to see the light of day until after the election. And I'm wondering if Donald Trump is not guilty in this hush money case, which I think could very well happen, if he's found not guilty, is that going to give him a lot of momentum in terms of winning this election? What do you think, Reverend?
I'm not necessarily. Well, one, I would say it certainly his legal trouble demonstrates to us certainly a two America system, right? If any one of us, I believe, who are on this Zoom, acted the way in court that he did, violated gag orders 10 times, I'm no attorney. I'll leave that up to Susan, but I'm pretty certain that we're not just going home after paying a modest, I think for him, $10,000. I do think, unfortunately, that perhaps his base, and this is beyond my expertise, much like the law, his base percentage of folks, I think, will support him no matter what. As he said himself, if he goes on Fifth Avenue and shoots someone, folks will still support him. So, but I don't think necessarily that would garner more support.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Reverend, thank you. Susan Betch-Tatoma is the attorney on the panel this evening. Susan, you've just heard what Reverend Wright has to say about the legal situation and the Trump situation. Where do you weigh in on this? Susan Betch-Tatoma.
Well, I want to answer all of your questions, Dr. Coleman, and I'll try to be concise. First, although the press calls it a hush money case, it's really a very typical non-disclosure agreement, and that really isn't the issue. The issue is that he claimed it was a legal expense, and there's a real question as to whether or not paying off your mistress is a legal expense or something else. So that remains to be seen. But I think his base is energized by these cases. They see him as being persecuted politically. Hillary Clinton, as we know, failed to turn over emails, smashed a hard drive in violation of a court order. Nothing happened to her. But I to answer your question about who do I think is going to win and what impact it will have on this country and why, I know that we're about evenly divided between people who support Biden and people who support Trump. But I know one person nobody wants to be president is Kamala Harris. For whatever reason, I'm sure she's a smart lady with a lot of good ideas and things to do. But if you look at the polls, absolutely no one wants to see her be president. So if Biden stays with her as his vice presidential pick, I see that sinking his chances even further. As far as Trump goes, again, I think these cases did him a favor. I think his base is energized and he's going to have his entire base out there voting. And as far as the I don't know, the talking point about this being a threat to democracy, I mean, first of all, we're republics, we're not a democracy. So there's no threat to something that doesn't exist. Elections are for government are the workings of the way it's supposed to be. So whether Trump is elected or Biden is elected, that's not a threat to anything. That's the way it's supposed to work. And we don't elect presidents democracy. It's an electoral college. So there's no threat to democracy here. And President Trump, as we know, when he was president, was impeached several times. They were busy doing that when they could have been dealing with COVID. President Biden has lost the young people with Gaza. He's absolutely lost the young people with Gaza. So I think collectively, I think that as things stand right now, Trump is in the lead and will remain in the lead unless something dramatic happens. How will that impact our country? I think our country's been around a long time, and I think it will survive no matter who's elected. And I think that there are mechanisms in place to remove a president who goes too far, and including the mental health issues if they think that someone is not mentally well. And I know they talked about that with President Trump previously. I know they're talking about that with President Biden now when he can't seem to find his way off a stage. Yes, they're both old men, but one of them seems to be suffering more than the other from age. I think a lot of it will depend on who President Biden picks as his vice president. I think if he picks somebody maybe younger, more vigorous, more maybe in line with the mainstream of America, and someone who's way more popular than Kamala Harris, that will dramatically boost his chances of being reelected, because the vice president, certainly if Biden is reelected, is really maybe more likely than we have in the past to become president. So I think that a lot of it's going to depend on that. But right now, I believe that it's President Trump in the lead for the various reasons I've stated. And I think the United States of America is a lot stronger than any one man, no matter who's elected, and we will be just fine.
Susan, you mentioned that Donald Trump is not a threat to our democracy because we're not a democracy, but we are a republic. So let's rephrase. Is Donald Trump a threat to our republic, Susan Betch-Satoma?
I don't think so. Again, I think that if he oversteps his bounds, there are mechanisms in place to remove a president who is overstepping their bounds, and that can be done. And again, there were lots of people. Let's talk about, you and I remember Richard Nixon, and he was involved in a burglary at the Watergate. At the very, he knew about it apparently and was involved in the planning, and nobody charged him with a felony. Pretty clearly, this is a way of more politically involving the justice system, maybe in a way that it shouldn't be. But again, I think it's been a huge mistake on the part of the prosecutors and anybody who is hoping to disadvantage Trump, because I think it's energized his base. And again, I think our republic has lasted 200 years, which is longer than most governments in the world. Not longer than most countries in the world, but longer than most governments that run those countries. And I think we're going to be just fine one way or the other.
As I remember, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard Nixon was in deep legal trouble, and it was likely that he would have been charged or indicted, but Jerry Ford gave him a pardon, and therefore he escaped justice in the sense of being indicted and tried and so forth. Is my reading of history incorrect here, or no?
No, sir, you are certainly a scholar of history. But I don't believe, and perhaps I am wrong, but I don't believe Nixon was ever indicted for anything. I think that Ford,
he wasn't indicted. Right. It was going in that direction.
Right, but I don't think he was even charged. I think that Ford preemptively pardoned him, but it never went that far. And we really don't know. It's speculative to know whether or not it would have gone in that direction. I know a lot of people were talking about it, but it didn't happen.
You read about that. There seemed to be a groundswell heading that would have resulted in Nixon being charged and or indicted, but it never happened. And Jerry Ford issued a presidential pardon, and the rest is moot, I guess.
And I would mention, Dr. Coleman, sorry for interrupting, but when Jerry Ford was president, we had a president and a vice president who were not elected. And you could talk about that being a threat to our republic, but everything worked out just fine.
Yeah, okay. I understand what your point is. Susan, you're involved with the legal system, and many people, a lot of Americans, feel that the legal system has been weaponized against Donald Trump, that folks, his enemies, are piling on. They want blood. They hate the guy. And this whole thing of these 4 different cases going after him is nothing more than the legal system, again, being weaponized against Donald Trump. and it's a disgrace. And a lot of the American people realize this, and therefore they don't take, for example, this Stormy Daniels hush money trial. They don't take it seriously. They think it's a circus and a farce designed to try to bring Trump down. What do you say to folks who think like that?
I think that there's some truth to that, but I think the problem, Dr. Coleman, isn't that they're prosecuting President Trump or ex-President Trump. I think the problem is that they're not prosecuting other people who have done the same thing. If you're going to start bringing charges against politicians for doing things, it was clear that Biden had taken home a lot of documents too. Again, there have been all kinds of things that have happened with politicians. Again, Hillary Clinton with the laptop and the smashing the laptop. There have been things that have happened with people in power that have not been prosecuted. So I think for me, I think I have more of a problem with the fact that other people are not being prosecuted than that Trump is. I think that if a prosecutor, they have a lot of discretion. In fact, the term is called prosecutorial discretion. And if they think a crime has been committed, it's their duty to bring charges. And I'm not criticizing any prosecutor for doing their job. But when they use their discretion in one direction and refuse to use it in another, again, I think that energizes the base that Trump has.
Yeah, a couple of points involving Joe Biden. When they found out about these documents that he had in his home or next to his Corvette in the garage and all that kind of stuff, he cooperated with the authorities, where Donald Trump did not. Isn't that a difference, a major difference between what finally happened, where Trump got whammoed and not Biden on this?
I don't think so, Dr. Coleman. With all due respect, if you and I both steal a car and one of us cooperates with the police and the other doesn't, we're both guilty of stealing a car. So I think the fact that you cooperate when you've done something wrong should not absolve you completely of responsibility. It might mean that it mitigates your sentence, but and certainly it does in a court of law. I represent, as you know, Dr. Coleman, I represent criminal defendants, and when they cooperate in the right way, it often will mitigate their sentence. I mean, the difference between jail and no jail, but it doesn't make the crime go away.
Well, let's talk really hard knuckles here. Let's talk brass tacks here. Isn't it true, or perhaps is it true, that they didn't go after Joe Biden for the documents that he was keeping at his home because they thought he was senile. He couldn't think coherently. They put him on the stand and they'd be really questioning an old guy, and that would be cruelty to a senior citizen. Was that part of it, that they didn't go after Joe Biden as much as they went after Trump?
It could be. It could be, but again, inability to remember what bad thing you've done mitigates a sentence or responsibility, and it may mean that he's not fit to stand trial. There's certainly that, but we seem to think he's fit to run the country. So you can't have it both ways. You can't be fit to run the country and not fit to face responsibility for what it is that you've done.
Okay,
Dr. Coleman, can I just throw something?
Yeah, Reverend Wright, yes.
I would just say Special Counsel Hur found no wrongdoing with Joe Biden and the documents. I think that one of the things that for individuals who believe perhaps that former President Trump is being, the criminal justice system is being politicized, right? Grand juries have been on board, right? A jury of his peers found that there was enough evidence for him to stand trial, and whether he's convicted or whether he is found innocent. But I think that letting it is not as though whether it is the DA in Georgia, the DA in Manhattan, or any other, special, Jack Smith. If a grand jury says there's enough evidence, then that is supposed to be how the legal system works. I would argue that if in one case, through the same means, through a special prosecutor, one was found to have done wrong and one is found to have not, whether that be because of the level of classification or whatever the reason was. I think that is a very necessary distinction to make.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the DA has the discretion to bring it to a grand jury or not. The grand juries don't convene unless the DA brings it to them.
May I add one little point, Dr. Coleman? In terms of the senility and all, that man who broadcast that said that wasn't true. That was his analogy. No testing. He was no doctor, no psychologist or anything. He just spoke to the seat and said that was his thinking. And so you have to take a look at that too.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Any comment on what we're discussing at this point? Okay, so that's where we are right now. Just heard from Susan Betch-Tatoma, attorney and pastor. And next up is Deborah Lynch. She's a member of the New York State Democratic Committee and a political activist. And she's coming to us live and direct on Zoom from Dublin, Ireland. Deborah, good evening.
Good evening.
What time is it in Ireland?
Let's see, it's 1:45.
1:45. Wow, my goodness. Thank you for staying up to talk to us from Dublin, Ireland. You've been listening to what we've been talking about, who's going to win, why, and what does it mean for America and all that. You maybe you've been hearing things too over in Ireland about all this. I'm going to turn it right over to you, Deborah Lynch.
Well, it's interesting. I usually do a lot more research on this for this show, but I got here and decided that the research I needed was to listen to what was happening around me. And so I spent time listening to the BBC in our rooms. We've been at several different hotel rooms, and it's quite obvious. I mean, anybody in these three countries can spot Americans a mile away. So when I'd be in situations where someone could talk to me, they would come up and talk to me. And we got into a lot of political discussions, and there's a lot of fear. I didn't get in one discussion that was afraid of Joe Biden. I hate to say it like that, but the way it is. They were very afraid of Donald Trump. And these three countries are quite progressive in a lot of things they do. Ireland was the first country to make LGBTQ marriage legal. Their climate change initiatives make us look like we're living in the dark ages. It's kind of embarrassing, really. But I can tell you right now that we are not looked at favorably for even entertaining Mr. Trump again. And this was just, I mean, honestly, I didn't seek out anybody from a political leaning. I don't know these people, I don't know their thought processes. One of them was one of the owners at the Cavern in Liverpool. We went there. That's where the Beatles got their start, along with many other amazing bands. And I went up to get some things for my daughter, and he came over to me and he said, "Oh, you're an American, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he started talking to me about this race and how scary it was to have Donald Trump in a position of power, making decisions, potentially choosing Supreme Court justices. We're a very powerful nation when it comes to our military force, but we have to wield that power in a way that doesn't seem threatening. And unfortunately, I think that's what we do globally, is we tend to come across as threatening and not as an alliance or in a position where we can be using our power for good. And as far as what's happening in the colleges, that's happening here too. There's a lot of protests happening all over. I took several photographs of encampments. of armed, students armed and armed, not allowing security going through. Trinity was the last one. We couldn't even tour Trinity because it was under protest. And we're being followed, the BBC here is following what's happening in our country in the colleges as well. And it's scary to watch. And I do believe that's going to hurt Biden because, he's going to lose that vote that he had that put him over the top the last election. It doesn't look well for Biden, unfortunately. I predicted Hillary Clinton and Trump back in 2016 in July of that year. I knew that she was going to lose. I told my daughter that. I could just hear it and sense it. So I'm afraid we're in that same precipice at this point again.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up for another question. In this election coming up, Trump versus Biden, given what you sense, what you're hearing, your political gut, is Joe Biden going to lose?
Yeah, I hope not, but I'm sensing it. It's different than it was in 2016. In 2016, Donald Trump, I don't believe there's a Republican on this panel that thought he was going to be the candidate when he was on that stage with 10 other people. And he just, he was like a slash and burn. I mean, he used rhetoric. He used, everybody was appalled at the way he acted on that stage. And yet he was the last man standing. And then because he was the last man standing, he won, the nomination for that party. But now it's different. His base has become more fervent, more strong, more fiery, more angry. It's a whole different feel, and it's almost Civil War-ish feel. And it's scary. I think our country we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in trouble.
Deborah, let me, at this point, go to a CNN poll conducted by SSRS. And in this CNN poll, most Americans, the majority of Americans, feel that Donald Trump's administration, his years in office, he was a success. The Trump administration was a success, and they feel the Biden administration has been a failure. Do you think that's a reason why Donald Trump is likely to win? Because people look at his years in a positive way, the majority of folks, and they don't like Joe Biden and don't like what's happened under the Biden administration.
Yeah. Well, the Biden administration, I don't think they've done a real good job celebrating their successes, because there's been many successes. But the bottom line is, when people are paying, the inflation rates are out of control. Hopefully it's starting to stabilize now. But when you see things like that, and you see the pocketbook of Americans, most Americans that haven't bought a house yet, when you see interest rates so out of control, they can't afford to buy homes, and rental properties are extremely high. And it's hard when Americans are suffering financially. It's about the economy. I mean, as it was said before, it's the economy, stupid. It's becoming better. It's getting better. I believe that it's going to be on an upswing, but I don't know if there's going to be enough time between now and November to show that as strongly and as fervently as he needs to be able to show that.
Yeah, the election will be close. I have here a column by Kimberly Strassel in the Wall Street Journal, and she mentions recent elections have come down to a handful of voters in key states. Mr. Biden in 2020 eked out his electoral college victory by 10,000 votes in Arizona, 12,000 in Georgia, and 21,000 in Wisconsin. What Republicans surely understand is they don't necessarily need those Biden voters suddenly to pledge allegiance to Donald Trump. They simply need them not to vote for Mr. Biden for a second time. This goes back to republic, democracy, all the rest. Very few people, if you look at the whole country and the millions of people, a handful of people end up deciding who's going to be president of the United States in these swing states. And of course, at this point, we have third-party candidates or independent candidates. One independent candidate is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Another independent candidate is Cornel West, who's a college professor who's been at Harvard and other places. He's a progressive and an activist. And then there's the Green Party candidate, Jill Stein. She's running for the third or fourth time. By the way, in terms of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he announced yesterday that he had a worm at one point in his brain, and the worm ate part of his brain. I'm not joking. That's what he announced. So anyway, we have these third-party candidates. We have the situation where it's going to be very close, and so on and so on. Deborah, a final comment. We'll get back to you later, but right now, another comment.
Yeah, those candidates you mentioned are mostly left-leaning candidates, which of course are going to siphon votes away from Joe Biden. And the issue with a lot of the students I know is my daughter's age and even younger. They got out and voted for Biden because of his promise about the college payback money. And of course, we know that got stopped in a court, but nothing has really transacted with that as well. I mean, that's another bone of contention. So,
even Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker of the House, said that she thought this whole loan forgiveness thing was unconstitutional and a power grab on behalf of the Democrats and President Biden. He's still at it, though, doing other things by executive action to forgive parts of student debt to different constituencies in the country. But appreciate you're coming all the way, zooming in. You're zooming in from Ireland, and all I can say is a shillelagh in my arm and a twinkle in my eye. We'll be out to Tipperary in the morning. Thank you.
Just so you know, my phone did freeze up a couple times, so hopefully I don't lose you. But
okay, well, I appreciate your zooming in this evening, Deborah, and we'll be back to you later. Dan Mandel, Mayor of Elmira, New York. Now, Mayor, you just were elected for a third time, right?
Correct. Yes.
My goodness. Well, congratulations. So you're sort of a consummate local political leader, consummate local politician. 3 times. You're a Republican in a Democrat city. What about this whole thing, as an expert in politics, this whole thing between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who wins and why does it matter and how it's going to impact America in the future? Dan Mandel.
Well, there's 2 things that people are really going to look at when they go to vote. One is the economy, and the other is the border right now. That seems to be the 2 big issues. I don't care how Joe Biden tries to spin it that the economy is doing better. When people go to the grocery store for a family of 4, they're paying almost double than they did 4 years ago. They're going to remember that when they vote. The border's wide open right now. We're seeing people flooding through the border because of Biden's actions. He did overturn all of Donald Trump's executive orders. He didn't put anything in place, which he could do right now to stop this influx. And we're not just getting people from South Central America and Mexico. They're coming in from all over the place, including China. So that's a national security issue, and people are paying attention to that. So when they go to vote, those are going to be the 2 issues that they're going to be looking at. And I firmly believe that's why Donald Trump's going to win the presidency.
Okay. Now, I want to bring something up, a very controversial thing, actually. Tucker Carlson. Everybody remember Tucker Carlson on Fox News? He's still very active and still very prominent in conservative and Republican circles. Tucker Carlson, Mayor Mandel, his theory was Biden was letting folks come in to America illegally because Biden felt these folks would end up to be Democratic voters. This has been called the Great Replacement Theory. A number of folks have said it's racist, but Tucker Carlson believed that. That theory is still circulating, that the more folks we have come in illegally, the more there's going to be a replacement of voters, and it's going to be in favor of the Democratic Party. What do you think of that, Mayor?
Well, that's speculation. I don't necessarily believe that. I believe that Joe Biden was in haste when he wanted to reverse everything that Donald Trump did, and this is one of the things that he did. And I think once he let the gates open, he found himself into a situation that now he's having a difficult time in finding how to close off this situation. And obviously, Congress is not helping. And that goes back to where he could have easily just put in an executive order to stop the flow of the illegal immigrants. So I don't necessarily agree with Tucker Carlson's assessment of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly is a dire situation. I'm concerned, Mayor, that maybe there's been a lot of folks coming over the border that are threats to our national security. There have been folks coming over that turns out they are terrorists and they have come over the border. If they are terrorists and they're coming over the border, they're not going to say, "Oh, I'm a terrorist. I want to identify myself as a member of ISIS." They're not going to do that. But there is a concern among a lot of Americans, and I think it's a valid concern. Who the hell's coming over? And there's really no regulation. We do have open borders, and this is many would say a threat to national security. What say you, Mayor? A threat?
Absolutely. It definitely is, Dr. Coleman, and we don't know who's coming through. And we have a lot of gotaways, and we don't know who they are. The FBI director even said he's very concerned about a major terrorist attack happening on our soil. And this is due to the open border policy right now that the Biden administration has solely did. That was, their policy. So I hate to say it, it's not a matter of if, it's going to be a matter of when. And I know our law enforcement people are very vigilant right now. My wife and I just took a flight. That was in the back of my mind. You don't know right now who's in this country and what's going to happen.
So yeah, so there is I think a lot of Americans, when they think of this situation with the border, to them it's a lot of folks, it's a national security issue, and they feel that Joe Biden has not done his job. He has not protected America. Folks are coming over the border. There's a lack of regulation and so on. This, by the way, is the 35th Political Pundit Night, exclusively mytwintears.com. I'm your PhD of politics, Dr. Stephen Coleman. We have a great panel this evening for number 35. I wanted to thank Dennis Sweeney. Dennis Sweeney is my executive producer and Zoom master for Political Pundit Night. Back at WETN, I want to thank Brandon Keiss for his great work for this cybercast. Also, Lisa Sturdivant has been very good in terms of promotion for Political Pundit Night. Now, Spencer Gustafson is usually at the station assisting and helping us with this Political Pundit Night, but I want to express my condolences to Spencer Gustafson and his family. His grandmother died, and that's why Spencer is not here this evening. He was very good in recruiting Brandon Keiss to work tonight on Political Pundit Night. Brandon is doing a great job, so I wanted to thank Brandon. By the way, Political Pundit Night, well, there's a couple of more coming up. August 15th, a Thursday night. August 15th is another Political Pundit Night. That's the Summer Sizzler edition of Political Pundit Night, August 15th. And right now, tentatively, we have August the 24th, tentatively as a Political Pundit Night. That's just a couple of weeks before the November election. So that should really be something. So take those down, August 15th and a tentative date of October the 24th for the next Political Pundit Night, exclusively mytwintears.com. By the way, I wanted to mention something. I always talk about mytwintears.com because it's great, and here we are. But there is a new TV show on WETM. Jim Turpin, the news director at WETM, he's been in the news business, Jim Turpin, for years, and he's has a show. He has a show called The Talk of the Tears. It's interesting because The Talk of the Tears has become The Talk of the Tears with Jim Turpin. It's a great show. Eileen Collins she's been interviewed quite a bit by Jim Turpin. I would urge everybody to look out for Talk of the Tears with Jim Turpin exclusively on WETM television, Next Star Broadcasting, NBC in Elmira, New York. Well, we've heard
Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Excuse me, but before you move forward, I just want to point out one thing about the border. If the border is so unsecure, and that if everybody's so much worried about the border, when Senator Langford was working with the Democrats and they came up with a plan, and yet when and Johnson did not bring it forward, Speaker of the House, because former President
Trump,
he made the statement, "This is what my platform. This is what I'm running on. So don't bring it up." If it is that important, then why was it not brought forward? Evidently, it's not that important.
Well, I think it is important in that situation with Speaker Johnson and Donald Trump and torpedoing that legislation. I think that was a disgrace. Something, even if he didn't like it all, something was better than nothing. That represented a compromise between Democrats and Republicans.
Definitely.
So, I think it was important. The border is important, and that was a political fiasco, or was strategically moved by Donald Trump to torpedo legislation that would help the border situation and therefore hurt his candidacy, and he didn't like it. Do you agree with that, Dr. Dozier?
Oh, I definitely agree with it. And yet the Republicans are responsible now because of what's happening at the border. And you have to excuse the screaming in back. That's my parrot. I don't know if you're hearing it. Not me being a child.
Your parrot saying USA, USA, is that your parrot saying?
I don't want to say that. I can't speak for Rico.
Okay. His name is Rico?
Yes.
Oh, my
He's 24 years old.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Did he immigrate to America, Rico?
No, he was born in Tampa. Hatched in Tampa, I should say.
Well, I'm glad Rico is making an appearance on Political Pundit Night on mytwintears.com. Wanted to move on. Dan Mandel, any final comments at all? You talked for a while. Anything you want to add at this point? Before
I just want to respond to the doctor's comments. And that is true that there was, Dr. Coleman, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. I just want to respond to Dr. Dozier's comments. It is true that the Republicans did block that legislation. There were some things in that legislation they necessarily did not like. But the bottom line is that people are going to hold Joe Biden accountable for that border because he's the one that lifted all the executive orders that started the influx of all these people. And what they see in New York City, what they see in these other cities with these illegal migrants in their cities, they're mad and they're going to vote that way. So that's the last comment I had to make on that.
Okay, thank you for the response. Dr. Dozier, to be fair, a response to Mayor Mandel or no at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay. want to move on to Dr. Jim Hassel. Dr. Jim Hassel is a member of Phi Beta Kappa. He's an educator, taught college a good part of his life, different colleges. He's a former mayoral candidate, Dr. Jim Hassel. Dr. Hassel, this presidential election, who do you think is likely to win? Why, and why does it matter? Jim Hassel, Dr. Hassel. Hello? Jim, can't hear you. Can't. Hello? Well, I'm going to move on then to Tom Santulli. Jim, we'll get back to you when you have your audio fixed. Tom Santulli, former Chemung County executive, the 2024 presidential election, who is likely, in your opinion, to win and why, and what does it matter? Tom Santulli.
Well, thank you, Dr. Coleman. First of all, I'll cut right to the chase. Who's going to win? Donald Trump. And I'm not a Donald Trump fan, but how I see it is, it's kind of interesting. When you look at the history of Donald Trump, when he first appeared in the debates, when he ran for the first time, I don't think Donald Trump ever thought he had a chance of even being the next president. But as the debates went on, Donald Trump started figuring out, hey, I'm knocking these people off one at a time. And of course, history tells us what it is. I mean, Donald Trump gets elected president. He has a decent 4-year term. Hey, I understand why people don't like Donald Trump, the same reason I don't. Sometimes he just doesn't know when to stop talking. And he can just be, he goes right for the jugular. And I think that sometimes he goes way too far. But he had 4 years, and he had his successes and he had his failures. Didn't win in a re-election. And today you have Joe Biden, who's our president. And no matter whether you like Joe or not, and certainly a lot of people do, and a lot of people don't, but Joe Biden, when you look at the polling and when you see the mainstream media just going on and on about this guy's in trouble and he may lose, they're in a panic. And it's because, and I think it's really simple. I'm 75 years old. I don't want to get old, and I don't want to get older, and I don't want to lose my memory, but things happen when you get old, and that's the way it is. And you have two people running for the office of president that the majority of Americans say they don't want, period. The majority of Americans say they don't want Donald Trump. They say they don't want Joe Biden. And we can sit here, and I can make excuses for Trump, and I can make excuses for Biden, but when I hear people say, my head wants to explode. Oh, that Joe Biden, he's as sharp as can be. Listen to the congressmen, the senators. Oh, I met with him this morning. He is the sharpest guy. He's not sharp, believe me. And, there's a space, there's a place for everybody. And people, of seniors in particular, myself included, there's a place for us. But Joe Biden's in a position, the most important position in the world, and he's not up for it. Trump has his problems with his mouth. Biden has problems with his brain through no fault of his own. You reach a point in your life where you can't do it. But he's not, the guy that helps you walk across the street, or he's running the store. He's the president. And he has tremendous power. Never has a press conference. Never. They keep him away from the press all the time. If he does meet with the press, questions are written, and then he has the answers. He has to read them. Believe me, this guy is not in a position, and people know it. For there to be a poll yesterday, I think it was USA Today, that 85% of people that took that poll said this guy's too old to be in the position. So here we are with this country at a very critical time, when there's so many problems at the border, where we've been with the whole abortion issue, the economy, the cost of everything. You have two candidates that people really don't want, but it appears that we're stuck with them. And one of them, I think, that doesn't have the mental capacity to do the job. Now, you probably may be able to throw Trump into that sometimes too. But, I think it's more than just we're Democrats and we're Republicans. And that's part of the problem we always had the opportunity for Republicans and Democrats to fight each other, but to be together at times too, and we're not. All we are is two groups of people that are always at odds, two parties, and it's really caused a lot of problems. And when you see that today there are more people who are independents than there are the Republicans and Democrats combined, to me, it's a very strong message that I think the people are sending. And I think Trump will win partly from what you said, Doctor, earlier. He's becoming a martyr. He's becoming I think when he goes on TV all day, every day, before and after the trial, I think people see it and they say, this is wrong. I may not even like Donald Trump, but he's being treated differently than any other person that's ever been in the presidency. And what it is just hatefulness for him by a lot of people. And some of it he's earned. But I'm telling you, at the end of the day, and I feel very strongly about this, that unless he pulls off something that is so bizarre, the public is leaning toward him, and they see Joe as a person who is not capable, who cannot even, when you hide somebody from the media, when you never have a press conference, I've said that twice, but to me, he has the least press conferences by far of any president in history. And when you don't communicate with people and you don't talk to people, and you can talk, last thing I'm going to say, the border, Joe Biden knew exactly what he was doing at the border. He got elected and he was going to reverse everything, rightfully or wrongfully, that Trump did. And he issued executive order after executive order at the border. And now people are fleeing across that border. And you are right. The head of the FBI said, be prepared. I mean, the Chinese that come to this country, and there's nothing wrong with Chinese people, but I'm talking the people that the people from China fly here. They don't come across the border and sneak over. They fly here, and then they come running across the border, and they're in this country for all the wrong reasons. It's going to happen. There's going to be a tragedy, and it's going to be on Joe Biden's watch. He can blame anybody he wants. He's the president. He's the guy that did it. You're the person. Have the guts to stand up and speak up.
Paul Ryan, former Congressman, Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, says that he's not going to vote for Donald Trump because Donald Trump has no character and character matters. Tom Santulli, does Donald Trump flunk the character test and therefore he should not be elected president again? What do you think, Tom Santulli?
Well, I don't think he's, the American people are not stupid. They elected him once, and I think they're going to elect him again. Now, all the times I've been on the show, I've always said I've never been a Trump fan, but when I kind of look at where he has been treated so differently by so many people, by the mainstream media, I just think it's unfair. I've watched every day what's going on in New York City with these. It's nothing but a circus. You have the best legal minds in this country saying, I don't particularly care for Donald Trump, but you know what? He's being handled unfairly. He's being persecuted where other people were never persecuted. And I'm telling you, American people like underdogs. I think they see him as an underdog, and I think they're gonna put him in. Hey, listen, if I had my dithers, neither one would be running. Neither one would be running. But the case, there's two of them. It's going to be one of the two. I think it's going to be Trump, and Joe Biden's his own worst enemy. You can't hide and run from everything. You can't, a real simple example. When that ship hit the bridge and the bridge collapsed, I think it was in Philadelphia, wasn't he on in 15 minutes saying he used to take the train over that bridge? Well, there was never, that's how his mind works. He's at the wrong place at the wrong time. And again, he's in the most important position in the world. He's not up for it.
Let me share a statement with you, okay, Tom Santulli. And the statement is this: Donald Trump is a dangerous and corrupt man that has no character, and he represents a clear and present danger to the United States. What say you?
Absolutely BS, period. He's a guy that opens his mouth too much before he thinks when he says something. He's a guy that I think, thrives on controversy, a guy that loves to get under somebody's skin. Do I think he's a danger? I think having a president that doesn't know where he is half the time, like we have now, he's a danger. He's a danger. He controls our military. He can, and you know, I'll say it again. When I see somebody on television who says, "Oh, I met with him today. He's as sharp as a," the American people don't buy it. The public is not stupid. For some reason, we think the public are idiots. We're not idiots. We can look at somebody and see where there's something wrong. And I'll say it again. I wish we had a completely different candidate. But of the two people, Trump will win, and he'd be a hell of a lot better president than a guy that hides from the press, who can never answer a question, and half the time doesn't know where he is. Period.
To be fair, Tom Santulli, and I realize the Biden administration is characterized by a lack of press conferences, but to be fair, most presidents, as they go on in office, have less and less press conferences. I think that was the case with Barack Obama. That was the case with a lot of presidents. You know why? They don't like the press. They don't like people that ask tough questions and put them on the spot. And that's the reason. That's the reason Biden, some would say, stays away from the press. Why cause problems for yourself by going to press conferences, right?
Well, you know, I guess I looked at it, and I sure as hell wasn't president of the United States, but I certainly was in public office for 35 years. You know, I thought the best way to communicate with people was to talk to people. And as you know, I used to love to be out and do it. You know, I don't know what the fear is today. Are we afraid of the truth? Our president's just afraid to get out there. And I mean, Trump sure as hell isn't afraid to open his mouth. It gets him in trouble sometimes, obviously, but he talks. But the guy that has the least press conferences of any president in history by far is Joe Biden. You know, now he stands by the plane where we can't hear him. They rev up the engines, and they can't hear a word that he says. And you know, let me give you another good example. Who at a peak where you're talking about the problems in the Middle East, his big contribution was, what did you say to Iraq or to Iran? Don't. He must have said it 50. Don't what? You know, don't come over. Don't shoot us. Don't what? You know, come on. That's hiding somebody that they know doesn't have the capability to be out there and up front and knows what they're doing. So now we're going to hide the person. Hey, he spent the first time he ran. He never confronts the public. And I'm a big one for, if you're a leader, talk to the people and let the people decide whether you're right or wrong. Don't hide.
Okay. Thank you, Tom Santulli. I want to go back now to Jim Hassel. Jim Hassel, an educator, was a college professor a good part of his life, member of Phi Beta Kappa. He did run for mayor of Elmira. Dan Mandel won a third term, however, but he's here with us. And I like to have Jim Hassel with us because I think he's a leader. I think people know about him in the community, and he's a rising star. So that's why Jim Hassel is on the Political Pundit Night program. So Jim Hassel, welcome. I think the audio is corrected, correct? Hello? Uh-oh. Hello? Trying to get Jim Hassel here. We still can't hear you, Jim. Okay, I'm going to try to fix the audio, Jim, and I'll be back to you because I desperately want to hear what you have to say. And so try to fix the audio and we'll be back. But let's move now to Dr. Richard Dozier, author, pastor, educator, a former vice president of Corning Community College. We have something in common. I'm a former vice president of Elmira College, and he's a former vice president of Corning Community College. Oh, my goodness.
Hi.
And so, Dr. Dozier, what say you about our subject this evening?
Well, you know, with what's been said, both candidates are terrible. But with that being said, I have to agree with Tom Santulli. Oh, and this is a shocker, but for a different reason. You know, when I look at America, you know, when we look at Donald Trump, he's a very corrupt individual. And when I look at America, it's a very corrupt society. See, we want to gloss everything over and make everything look pretty. We talk about the founding of this country was on Christian principles. That's a lie. It was found on the doctrine of discovery. And that's when, you know, the Pope said, you know, you go into a land, if they're not Christians, we have a right to take over that land. And then we had in the 19th century, we had the manifest destiny. So America has always been a corrupt country, and we lie about the whole situation. And you know, when we look at the polls, what it's saying that Donald Trump is winning, it's because America loves corruption. They love a corrupt government. Look at New York alone. In New York alone, you had 2 governors who within the last 10 years resigned because of their corruption. And so America just loves this corrupt type of government. And when we talk about why people may not vote for Biden is because of Vice President Harris. Let's put the truth out there. People don't want Vice President Harris because she's a Black woman. Now, yeah, America probably says, well, you know, a white woman should become president first. And so, you know, if Biden, something happens to him and Harris is installed, now we've got a person of color. So that's the reason why people don't want Vice President Harris or to be the running mate of Biden. So we got a lot of issues in this country. When we look at Gates and we look at Margaret Taylor Greene and we look at Boebert, what's happening in the U.S. Congress? It's all that corruption, all the lies, the fantasies, the following of these conspiracies. So all of this is going on, you know, and to go back to the border, the whole situation at the border, if it was that important to the Congress, they would have ignored what Trump said and said, "What we need to fix our border." They're not interested in fixing the border because they're, you know, they want Trump to be president. So if that's what's going to happen, that's what will happen. You know, I'm concerned worldwide what's happening. You know, if we have this person as president who's very corrupt, you know, we know him as a liar. He didn't pay taxes. He brags about it. He never served in the military. Mr. Bone Spurs. So when we start looking at this, and he's going to be a world leader, he's going, you know, what kind of respect will these other countries have of him? We already saw at one of the summits where Angela Merkel and the rest of them were laughing about his behavior. And so I'm concerned about America on the world stage. With him as president, very corrupt individual. He's already said, let's get out of NATO. No, he doesn't want to back Ukraine. And so we've got some real problems with Trump. There's some very real problems with Trump. Yeah, you know what? I've known some very sharp 85 years old. My grandmother was 86 when she passed. She was very sharp to the day she passed away. And so we can't start, oh, you know, he has a bad memory, blah, blah, blah. No, he's still a very sharp individual. As you indicated, yes, he does less press conferences because, quite frankly, some of the questions that the press ask are really dumb. I'm saying they're dumb because, you know, even I as a normal citizen could say, you know, I know the answer to that. Or why did you ask that question? And so here again, I'm looking at the American society. And, you know, when we start talking about the Christian right, the evangelicals, this is supposed to be a Christian nation. And yet they're supporting a man who lies, who grabs women by the hoo-ha and, you know, thinks it's funny and locker room talk. He's 88 counts against him. He tried to, you know, he took an oath to support the Constitution of the U.S. And what does he try to do? Overthrow the Constitution, overthrow the elections. And so how can you trust such an individual? Only corrupt people like corrupt leaders. So therefore, I say, if he wins, it's because, you know, we have a very corrupt society here in America.
Dr. Dozier, let me make sure that I heard you right. I think you may have said that people, the American people, many of them do not want Kamala Harris because she's black. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
That's what I'm saying.
And why does okay now? Therefore, why do so many want Michelle Obama to run for president? Yeah, there's a lot of white people that would like Michelle Obama as well as black people to run for president. Why is it in the case where some support Michelle Obama but don't support Harris in terms of vice president?
And the reality is, we know that Michelle Obama has said that she is not interested in running.
But I'm asking
she's not a political person.
So
I don't think a lot of people are saying, well, you did that topic came up, but it's I don't think a lot of people are really for it. It sounds nice. America likes good sound bites. And so let's pretend. So they make that presumption. Because what's wrong with Kamala Harris? What has she done that no other vice president has really done? None of them are outspoken. And so what is their real reason? Mm-hmm. So I'm throwing that out there.
Okay, well, I'm just asking, I'm just trying to clear it up in my mind. Mm-hmm. Why do folks that are racist, they're against Kamala Harris for that reason? They're racist and don't want a black as vice president, but they're entertaining and really would like someone like Michelle Obama as vice president. Well, why is that? Seems to be an inconsistency.
Okay, because they don't see her as being a black woman. I can't tell you how many times that I've been said, oh, you don't act like them. I don't look at you as being black. I don't see you as black. You're not like those others. And this is the way they see Michelle Obama.
Okay, so they see Michelle Obama as kind of a white woman, correct?
Yeah, yes, precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve, I think it's more likely that the group of people who want to see Michelle Obama run for president and the group of people who are adamantly opposed to Kamala Harris, they just don't overlap. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think they're entirely separate sets of people.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you there. Yes.
Okay. May I say one thing, Dr. Coleman, in terms of Michelle Obama, they know she's not interested in running. So you can talk about her and promote her and all, because she's not interested in running. They know that. So if they support her, she's no threat to anybody. But Kamala Harris, Mrs. Harris, can't get a name out there. Mrs. Harris is already in there, and there's a possibility for her. But there's no possibility for Mrs. Obama, because she's not interested, and she's not even in the game. She's in the bleachers looking at the game. So you have to look at the situation too. She's I can say I want her all day, but I know I'm not going to get her because she's not interested and she's not running. But that's a possibility.
To go back to what Dr. Dozier said earlier, do you think a lot of people think of Michelle Obama as a white woman?
I never thought of that. She doesn't even fit the picture for me, but I don't know what Dr. Dozier had heard, but I never thought of that, and I never heard anybody say that. They like her for what she stood for and all of that, and they see her as a fine woman, but I never thought about her in terms of color. People thinking of her of different color.
Okay. Wanted to mention Jim Hassel. We tried to get Jim on several times during this cybercast. I really want to hear what he has to say, but there's a problem with his audio, and he may not be on this evening. So that's a loss for Political Pundit Night, and it's a loss for the community. But I'm going to invite Jim Hassel back to the future Political Pundit Nights, unless he can get on between now and the end of the program. We have about 26 minutes left for Political Pundit Night number 35. Brent,
Dr. Coleman,
yeah, go ahead.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
It is certainly true that President Biden has done about, I think, something like half the press conferences of former President Trump, but he has also doubled the amount of informal question and answer sessions. So while he is not sitting down with reporters and not going to the press briefing room, he is certainly answering more questions on the go than both former President Trump and to be quite honest, former President Obama as well.
Yeah, I have a question. The questions that Biden answers, though, when he's out and about talking to people, are they softball questions, not from reporters, but from rank and file individuals who aren't as adept at asking tough questions like the press in Washington?
No, I mean it's the press pool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be the same people who would be in the press briefing room, whatever press travels with the president. He is
okay.
Yeah, not the rote line questions, just those who are asking questions.
May I weigh in one more time? Because
yes,
you're in this arena. And Tom, you know I like you. You and I go way back, but I want to hit you on communication. See, there's a difference between communication and effective communication. You're talking about President Biden doesn't speak much. It's good because Trump speaks too much and nothing comes out but junk and lies and threats. So sometimes it's better to be quiet because if you are an empty pitcher and you don't say anything, people don't know you're an empty pitcher. But when you're an empty pitcher and you're always pouring, then people can identify you by that and say, do you remember what he said? So it's about effective communication. You can talk all day, but it's what you're saying that matters.
Georgia Verdier, thank you. By the way, toward the end of this, I want people to just jump in, and if there's something you're been holding back on and like to talk about, please keep that in mind. But right now, I want to go to Brent Sturmer, Chemung County legislator. At one point was a member of the Elmira City Council and then was elected to the Chemung County legislature, where he is now a legislator, a lawmaker in Chemung County. By the way, Jim Hassel, I'm going to go back to Jim Hassel right after Brent Sturmer to see if Jim is in communication with us. But right now, Brent Sturmer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, and I'll be with you as soon as possible, Jim Hassel. Brent Sturmer, the 2024 presidential election. Who do you think is going to win? Why? And why does this matter? What's going to happen?
I think Joe Biden is going to win. Thank you, Dr. Coleman, for having me here. I appreciate it. It's fun. It's a great group of people. Georgia, who I've loved since I was a young child and listened to stories about her and her ongoing things that she's done her entire life. I'm really always excited to be anywhere she is. So why Joe Biden? Why do I think he's going to win? I think that when I had the pleasure of working with Dan and the Deputy Mayor Duffy, it was a great time on City Council. I really enjoyed it. I think that Dan's strong point was that he was always willing to listen to good ideas. He didn't really see blue or red or R or D. He always would be like, well, that's a good idea. And he never really cared what party. It was just, he was always a leader that pushed forward and with good ideas. As we had that election, I said to many people, I believe Dan will be reelected again, and I believe Joe Duffy will be reelected again. However, I believe that, I think it was in the 80s when the city really moved from being a Democratic city into a Republican city. I feel that there's been a change. And even though everyone was saying, oh, yes, this person, I said, no, I think we're going to go back to a Democratic majority. Now, I'd heard that many times, both while I served on city council and before, but it did not happen. We were a Republican majority for many years. It changed. I thought it was. And it's because of a lot of different reasons, I think. I think that there are so many people who are very frustrated. I think that Thomas Antulli, he was always a great person at controlling the narrative. He would go to meetings. He would listen to what people had to say. He would, get a large base and a poll of how the community felt, and then he would act on those things. So I think that while you have, we worked so much on pulling bullies out of schools and out of the environment, I think really Americans like bullies. And I think they like, politicians. And like Tom said, we've lied often. We had, Roosevelt, was in a wheelchair. And how long did the American people really not know that? We've had a history of doing things like that. I think that people see Trump being treated unfairly. And you know what? He is being treated unfairly. If you have, instead of getting fines and then being thrown into jail, he didn't. And he hasn't. He has not been treated like every other American. So part of them, in our part of our America, they really dislike that as well. But I think really, and while we're here, thank you to WETM. But really, it's the media controlling all these narratives of what it is. And I think that either way, if Joe Biden doesn't win, I think it will be those same people who've protested about injustices over the last years and years and years. Those will be the same people that will protest again. And I don't think it would be pretty. And I also think on the flip side, if Donald Trump doesn't win, there's going to be an amount of people who are upset, and we could have a recurrence that was much like on January 6th. So I think, I see a lot of people, and I like with Kamala Harris, I don't know any of Democrat has ever said to me, oh, I don't think that she's great, she's going to be a leader. I've had lots of Republicans say to me, oh, that vice president, da, da, da. They also didn't like Barack Obama. So it was no surprise for me when they say to me, oh, Kamala Harris, this, that, whatever else. I think that when the Republicans really had a chance, they could have really pulled votes, was with Nikki Haley. I think that she was a strong candidate, and she would have been great for the Republicans because I think that she could have actually done things as a president. And the reason I thought she was good as well is because she's not 70-some years old. Go ahead, Dr. Coleman.
Okay, I appreciate your comments, Brent, and we'll be opening up for a roundabout discussion in just a moment, even more so than what we've been doing. But I think that the audio problems with Dr. Jim Hassel have been straightened out. Jim, are we all set? Hello?
I'm ready.
Great.
Yeah.
Welcome, Jim Hassel. I've been waiting in bated breath for you, and again, welcome to the program. And the question is, the 2024 presidential election, who is likely to win, why, and why does it matter? Jim Hassel, Dr. Jim Hassel.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. I'm sorry for the problems. It doesn't take a PhD to know how to deal with mechanical things, and but I'm not good at them. Anyway, I'm going to disappoint you because I don't really. I'm uncertain who's going to win. I mean, it looks like a knockdown, drag out fight. But what I will say is, in my own opinion, if Trump wins, it will be a disaster. And there are lots of reasons for that. I think he's an immoral opportunist, a braggart. He dismisses people who work for him on the slightest excuse because they disagree with him about something or other. And we've talked about reasons that people might not go for Biden. I think that Trump also has some serious problems with the Republican Party. I would point out that Mike Pence refuses to endorse him because he says he's betrayed the pro-life movement. We know of Liz Cheney and Nikki Haley, who represents a large group of Republicans who don't like him. And I would also mention Mitt Romney, and we know that he is, or at least I think he's a man of some great integrity. Perhaps not. I don't like the way blustery candidate just abuses people so much, and everything is about him. I don't think that's a good president. The way he gets involved in all these sinister and tawdry matters, I sort of think of him as the would-be tabloid president. some of the things that he said recently, for example, that Jews who vote for Democrats hate Israel and their religion. Well, maybe they love their country. Maybe they love their religion. Who is he to make these gross generalizations, which he constantly does and is meaningless? I would like to see him, address real issues. And as for the problems with his criminal cases, we've heard him ask who was it, Secretary of State? I can't remember. Anyway, the representative in the lawyer, the Attorney General, I think, in Georgia, to get him some votes. I think he needed 10,000, didn't he? Something like that. We know that's illegal. I just see him as a criminal. I personally would say, if nothing else, maybe he'll be in jail before the election, and that would please me very much. As for Europe, I do have friends in Europe, and they are all terrified of Trump's winning. I think that the fact that he supports tyrants like Putin says a hell of a lot about who he is as a person, and casts, in my mind, doubt on his judgment. Equally, his dismissal of the Palestinians suggests to me that he has no measured view of the situation in the Middle East, and really is incapable of doing that, capable of making reasoned judgments. The same thing is true with the way he's talked about demonstrators. This to me is an issue of democracy and of freedom of speech. So I don't see what people see in him. I would have hoped, and I said this at the last Pundits Night, I would have hoped that the Republicans could find someone who is a much more palatable and respectable individual to run for president. It's true that he is insulting our true allies. The strongest allies that we have are the allies in Europe. And he just insults them, and they're terrified by it. And I understand that perfectly. So I really don't have much nice to say about him. I'm sorry for that, but I don't really see him as a dignified and responsible president.
Jim, I understand, Dr. Hassel, I understand what you're saying, but why is he doing so well with so many Americans?
Well, I think that in part because of the immigration issue, he claims that he is going to, what did he say? I can't remember his exact terms, but to get rid of millions of illegal immigrants in the United States. I wonder if that's a slap in the face to Ronald Reagan, who gave legal status to 3 million. I've watched this business of the immigration issue for 50 years. No one does anything about it, Democrat or Republican. They're both reprehensible in this matter, and they should have done something. And the Republicans should have gone through with their agreement with the Democrats earlier this year. I'm sorry for that. And it's true, too, that although our economy has improved a lot and continues to seem to improve in something of an adverse world, our prices are going way up. There's no question about it, and it's difficult. And affordable housing, or these things are serious issues in the United States. So I would say too that the cost of living is another issue that Mr. Mandel pointed out, and I think it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Dr. Hassel. And I think we waited for you, but it was worth the wait to hear what you had to say.
Thank you.
Jeff Murray, veteran journalist, Star Gazette, USA Today Network. Jeff Murray, as a journalist, you've been listening to all of this. and the different viewpoints. What do you make of all this evening from a journalistic standpoint?
Well, Dr. Coleman, first of all, thanks for inviting me back. I always enjoy these lively discussions. One thing that comes to mind is many years ago, back in my radio days, I had a general manager who used to preach to us that perception is reality. And I don't think that's true. And it's most true when you come to politics. I think perception really is reality in the political world. It's sort of like I think Rush Limbaugh used to call Washington Hollywood for ugly people, and but probably a little bit maybe insulting to some, but his point was that it's sort of like like Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, and I don't think you see that anywhere more clearly than in politics. I've always, I've been following elections and politics for many years, and I kind of divide voters into a few different categories. Number one, you get the partisans. If you're a Democrat, you're going to vote for somebody who's got a D next to his name, regardless, whether you really like him or not, whether you really like their policies or not. They're a Democrat. You're going to vote for a Democrat, and the Republicans do the same way. If you're a hardcore Republican, whoever's on the ticket that's got an R, they're going to vote Republican. Period. Even if they have to hold their nose, close their eyes when they pull that lever, they'll vote for their party. Then you got all these people in the middle, the independents, and I kind of divide them into two categories. You've got the ones who really pay attention, the ones who do the homework, they do the research, they look at the candidates and what their histories are and how they vote on different things, and they decide that way. And then you get the ones who are more the drive-by types, the ones who kind of pay attention, the ones who have the really short attention spans. They're the ones, the soundbite generation, the ones who they don't look past the headlines. They see the clickbait and the stuff like that, and that's what they pay attention to. And I think when you look at that, you look at a Trump rally, you see all the thousands of people there. You look at them shaking hands with people, and to some people that looks impressive. You look at Biden. Sometimes Biden looks kind of frail. Sometimes he kind of stumbles. There's a perception, at least. I mean, you can argue all day whether he's capable to do the job, but there is a perception among a lot of people that he's not all there, which scares some people, I think. I think a couple of the other guests tonight made the good point. I don't think this is going to be an election of who is the most popular candidate or the most beloved candidate. I think it's going to be more of an election of who is the least hated candidate. I think the majority of the people, the ones who aren't driven strictly by partisan politics, they're going to look at, okay, I'm not real keen on either of these guys. Who can I tolerate the most? Who do I like? Who do I not hate the most? And which is really kind of a shame. But these are the candidates that that have been nominated or presumably nominated. Again, we still have the independent candidates, and that's always a wild card. And how that's going to pan out if they're going to draw votes from one candidate to the other. Kennedy, obviously, while he's running as an independent, his family's always been affiliated with Democrats. If people vote for him, that probably will pull some votes away from Joe Biden. But I think, in the end, it's going to be Biden and Trump, and most people, it's going to be one of these. It's going to hold their nose and say, okay, I don't really like this guy, but and it's certainly not ideal. But in the end, I think, and we have 6 months to go, and a lot can happen in that time. I'm not a big believer in polls, even if polls show that Trump seems to be holding sway in some of these swing states, but a lot can happen in the next 5 months.
Jeff, thanks for those comments and those insightful views. We don't have a lot of time left right now, but Dan Mandel, you haven't said a lot, and I let turn to you right now to ask you,
Sure.
is there anything else you'd like to say as a closing statement or some closing thoughts, Mayor Mandel?
Sure. First of all, I think we all agree we don't have the best candidates running for either party in this election. I'd like to comment on what Brent said. And yeah, Nikki Haley, if she was the nominee for the Republican Party, she'd probably walk away with the general election. Unfortunately, it's going to be a difficult choice for many people because we have two candidates that just are not that popular. Again, I think people are going to look at the economy. They're going to look at the border. They're going to look at what's going on in the world right now. And I think that's why a lot of people may sway towards Donald Trump. There'll be other people that that won't vote for Donald Trump because of his legal troubles and because he runs his mouth too much. So we have two different candidates that are not very well liked. And the interesting and the wild card is going to be RFK Jr. and what he polls from which candidate. Some states it shows that he's going to pull from Joe Biden. I believe it's in maybe Michigan or Wisconsin. He's pulling more from Donald Trump. So he could be a game changer in this election. So that's going to be interesting to watch. And that could definitely change this entire dynamic.
Yeah, that's a good point. These independent third-party candidates, the polls differ on where they're going to get their votes. And right now, to use a phrase I heard a little bit earlier, it's a wild card. Joseph Kolosinski, Professor Kolosinski, you opened up with some comments, some analysis, some commentary. Any final thoughts, Joseph Kolosinski? Can you keep it to a minute and a half? Hello?
Unmute, but my button worked, right?
Yep, you're okay now.
Awesome. I like what Jeff had to say about perception being reality, because I've been checking on some stuff as I've been sitting here waiting for everybody to get their turn, which actually just happened. And we talked about how Biden has opened the border, and I'm looking at this. I Googled that, and there was link after link about how it's not an open border, but there's this thing from the Cato Institute that says, his border policy amounts to open borders. This criticism is not simply inaccurate; it is unhinged from reality in a way that distinguishes itself from normal political hyperbole. And yet, we all perceive that we have a problem with an open border, right? Biden has apparently had over 500 presidential orders in regard to the border, which is more than Trump had in his 4 years, right? And there's a lot of perceptions that I'm hearing that I don't think jive with reality, and I think that is probably the biggest challenge for the Biden campaign.
Yeah, the power of perceptions. This has been the 35th Political Pundit Night, exclusively on mytwintears.com. I want to thank everyone. You've disagreed without being disagreeable. This is smart talk. We need more of this in America. And I want to thank Georgia Verdier, the president of the local NAACP, the Elmira Corning chapter, Joseph Kolosinski, associate professor, Elmira College. Elmira College should be proud to have you because you're terrific. Reverend Nathaniel Wright, pastor of the Calvary Baptist Church in Ithaca. Susan Betch-Tatoma, attorney pastor. Deborah Lynch, member of the New York State Democratic Committee and political activist. Dan Mandel, now the third-term mayor of Elmira. Dr. Jim Hassel, who is tenacious in trying to get on this program through all the audio difficulties. And Jim Hassel, educator, former Elmira mayoral candidate, and Phi Beta Kappa. You made it. You finally got through those difficulties, Jim, and thank you. Tom Santulli, former Chemung County executive. Dr. Richard Dozier, author, pastor, and educator. Brett Sturmer, Chemung County legislator. And Jeff Murray, veteran journalist, Star Gazette, USA Today Network. There's no one better than Jeff Murray and the Twin Tiers. when it comes to journalism, and he's here on Political Pundit Night exclusively on mytwintears.com. Wanted to mention the next Political Pundit Night is Thursday, August the 15th, Thursday, August the 15th, and then Thursday, October the 24th, tentatively, about a week and a half before the election. Keep tuned to WETM, mytwintears.com, for the best in political talk. And I look forward to being here again at the next Pundit Night. I want to thank all the viewers for everything you do to keep this show going and everything you do to support this program. I also want to remind you to watch Talk of the Tears exclusively on WETM television with Jim Turpin, the news director of WETM. Talk of the Tears is the Talk of the Tears. It's a great show. Jim Turpin reminds me of David Susskind. There used to be a guy named David Susskind who interviewed people, and David Susskind was perceptive. He was classy. He asked open-ended questions. And Jim Turpin, to me, is the David Susskind of the Twin Tiers. Well, anyway, I'm your PhD in politics, Dr. Stephen Coleman. Thanks so much. Have a great night, and so on until next time.